All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Safety and the Sportswriter Show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe as we get ready to head into a jam-packed college football weekend, Labor Day weekend. A lot of college football, there's a few games in there with some definite playoff ramifications for later on in the year. We're going to get to that. We got Coach Pime unveiling his Colorado Buffaloes tonight against North Dakota State. And we had the final cut downs of the rosters this week, plus a few other things like Russell Wilson being announced as the starting quarterback for Pittsburgh. But Nate, before we get to that, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to watch some football tonight. And I'm telling you, man, don't sleep on NDSU, man. That's a solid football program. And I wouldn't be shocked if they play Colorado close, even if they won. It wouldn't shock me at all.
You know, that's what a lot of the quote unquote pundits have been saying this week about, this team has, they're always in the running at their level for championships. And they said they have the two things that the Buffaloes have not been able to assure in the Deion Sanders era so far is they have a strong offensive and defensive line. They say, Colorado has all the skill positions you could want, but they have not been yet to put together that offensive line and defensive line that they think they need. And they said, North Dakota State is the exact opposite. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was the issue last year. I mean, if you can have a great quarterback and a great skill position player like Hunter and all that, but if you get pushed around physically, you're not going to win the majority of your games. And you were the one that really hammered it home last year when everybody was ballyhooing this program and talking about how great Coach Pime was and how what an amazing job he was doing. You the whole time were saying, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Calm down. And I was with you, but I was like, whoa, he even got me a little bit at the beginning. And I'm like, wow, they beat TCU. Well, yeah, they beat TCU. And then they lost, 6 straight to close the year out. And they were 1-8 in the Pac-12. You watch the fanfare around this team. You listen to Prime Talk. You'd think this team won 12 games last year. Not 4. I mean, they were 4-8, and you are what your record says you are. And, we'll see. They added some pieces this offseason, but how much better did they get up front? I don't really know. We'll find out. But this is big boy football, and I wouldn't take NDSU lightly if I were them.
This is also, I think, a good referendum on really what a transfer portal can do to a team that's trying to get into the echelon and become a serious team in the NCAA. I heard, did I hear it right? They had 44 new players come in this year. 44.
I don't know if it was 44 new players or 44 transactions. I'm not 100% about that, but I do know there was at least 44 going in and going out, or maybe even 44 brought in. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of turnover over there.
I mean, that's a hell of a lot of turnover. I mean, especially, and this is going to be the unique thing going forward. You've talked about it with the transfer portal and everything, coaches' ability to maintain players. I mean, you can't keep players that are ready for going to the pros from going to the pros. But I mean, to keep the people you bring in and be able to coach them for 2 or 3 years, especially along the offensive line and those kind of positions, that's a lot of turnover when you think about that every year. The continuity, it's gonna be interesting to see going forward to how they
look,
maintain it.
Yeah, and look at, I know I'm a Buckeye homer and I don't hide it, but look at the difference. Okay, you got Colorado over here, who's flux in, coming out, going in, trying to get, fill all these gaps in the transfer portal. Then you have Ohio State, who's returning 10 of 11 starters on defense.
Right.
And did they go out and get Caleb Downs? Yeah. He was one of the best players, if not the best player in the. I think he was the best player in the transfer portal. A lot of people thought he was. He was the freshman player of the year in the SEC. He was freshman All-American. I think he was third team All-American as well. Played in the national championship semifinal. The guy's the real deal. But that's one guy they went and got. The rest, everybody else that'll be starting for the Ohio State defense, played last year. And most of them started. They did lose Eichenberg and Steele Chambers, but they got C.J. Hicks and some other guys that played a lot last year. So that's the one thing, is that you've got to figure out, if you're a good coach, you learn how to adapt and you learn how to use the things that have changed in college football. Use the transfer portal. If you've got, if you just haven't been developing guys at a particular position, or you lost a guy to the NFL, or maybe you lost a guy to the transfer portal, well, by God, go out and use the portal to bring somebody in to compete with the young guys. But you also have to recruit still. Right. You also have to keep guys at home and keep the guys that you have. And that's what Coach Day and a lot of the other coaches are doing, is they're using this NIL to keep guys around, guys like you said that were juniors that may have gone to the NFL. We have guys that are seniors, right, that were on their fifth year because of COVID, that could have left after being a senior, and they came back because they got that extra year of eligibility. Why would you go, man? You're having fun. You're in Columbus, these guys are treated like rock stars, Joe.
Yeah,
and they're making $1 million a year. Some of them that aren't even like the greatest players on the team, they're just like starters. They're making $1 million a year. Why would you leave that?
No, I wouldn't leave it at all. My God,
I
stayed in college as long as I could. But
yeah, I played for free and I stayed for 4 years.
But you think about it, it's true. What you said is, like, you can't just depend on the transfer portal reloading your team every year. You got to have a infrastructure of your recruits, and then you pick and choose the one or two positions that you have a need for, that you really have a need for, to come in there and finish the process. That's how it should be done. One thing I wanted to bring up to you, because I was doing my trivia last night, and I was talking to a bunch of guys, because we were talking college football this week coming up. Great game, 12 o'clock on Saturday, Clemson against Georgia. Very interesting game. But my question, if I'm the NCAA, and this is just programming for me, why wouldn't you put that game on Friday night instead of Oklahoma Temple?
Why wouldn't you have that game on Saturday night? I would have that game on prime time on Saturday, where everybody could watch it. I don't understand why it's a noon kick.
Okay, put that on Saturday, and then move Notre Dame, Texas A&M to Friday night.
Exactly.
I'm just saying, have one of these, LSU, USC, Friday night. There's nothing else on except regional baseball. If you want to start this season on a high note, to have one of those games between blue blood programs, and if it lives up to its hype and gives you something, you might get a bunch of people tuning in.
Or the Penn State West Virginia game. Why they have Clemson, Georgia, and Penn State West Virginia? Both of them play at noon. Right. I don't understand that. Why are you having both those games on Saturday when you have an entire weekend of a holiday weekend to stretch these games out? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I just don't get why you put Oklahoma Temple, because that game should not be close, A, and B, it really doesn't, because of it. I'll watch probably the first half at least, just to get a look at Oklahoma. But I would feel by then Temple, and it should be like 28, 24 points down, and the game should be over. So I don't understand that.
Temple had 2 seasons there. Who was the coach there? Was Rule? It Matt Rule?
Yeah,
Matt Rule was there, for a couple of years and did some things, and then it was over. So
Right.
yeah, I mean they haven't been good at football ever, and they had one like mediocre season, and I don't understand why they would put them on at prime time on Friday night.
No. I think they missed a major opportunity there. Um, what? I mean, let's take Notre Dame. Everybody's saying that this is Notre. I think you said it yourself. This should be Notre Dame's biggest hurdle. If they get past this, Freeman and his boys should be a playoff team. Um, but as you pointed out too, you have the coach from Duke going up against his old quarterback.
Yeah.
If anybody knows what he can and can't do, it's him. What do you? And I mean, is this how big is this for Notre Dame, and how much do you trust, or should I trust Marcus Freeman?
Yeah, I like Marcus Freeman. I think he's a good coach, but this game is a tricky one simply because what does this team look like? How much how much have they bonded, come together? I mean, week one playing a big time opponent like this is tricky, and it can go two ways. It can go really well, and you can get off to a great start, or you can have issues executing and get beat. And like you said, their schedule. I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of them, but this schedule's a joke, man. Especially after Florida State laid a big freaking egg against Georgia Tech. I mean, that was the biggest game on their schedule, was playing Florida State at home on November 9th. Well, Florida State doesn't really scare anybody anymore, considering they lost to Tech. And so this is the biggest game they play all year, right here.
Yeah.
7:30 on the 31st. That's the biggest game they play all year. And the one thing I will say is Texas A&M don't mess around. They had some transfers come in, some transfers go out, but best believe they'll be ready to go. And their offensive and defensive lines are both pretty solid. But I just don't really know what to expect from this Texas A&M team. I mean, how we thought they were going to be good with Jimbo. We thought they had the personnel to compete for a title a couple years ago, and they won 8 games. So you just don't really know what any of these teams look like until you see them play a game or two. And I think this is a tricky matchup for Notre Dame, especially having a first-year starter playing at quarterback.
The thing about Notre Dame, I grew up a Notre Dame fan. I go way back to the Air Parsegian days, and when I was in my teenage years. But I mean, the thing about Notre Dame now, I mean, the one thing that sticks out on I don't mind them playing Army. I don't mind them playing Navy, because those rivalries go back way into Notre Dame's history. But Northern Illinois, really? Northern Illinois. You couldn't pick some team that, Northern Illinois. I mean, what, the team that gave us Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah, man. I mean, the schedule's it's bad. I mean, Northern Illinois, this is your away schedule. You're playing at Purdue. You're playing at USC. I mean, they've got like 10 home games, Joe. Their only away games are Texas A&M, Purdue, USC. I mean, I think they have three away games.
No, they'll be in New York City at Yankee Stadium against West Point, but it's listed as a home game for them. It's the same thing. It's the same thing they did to Boston College a few years ago.
Well, who's going to be in the stands? Notre Dame fans or Army fans? I mean,
well, you get the core of the Army. Yeah, I mean, you'll get the core there, but I mean, other than that, I'm thinking about trying to get tickets to that game just to go see it. I think it'd be a good experience in New York City.
No, I agree too, but I'm just saying they've got an exorbitant amount of home games, and they out of conference. They play basically an ACC type schedule, but the ACC is down, and then they supplement it with Northern Illinois and Miami of Ohio.
Yeah,
come on, guys.
You can do better than that. You should be better than that.
Yeah, you should. And the thing is, I understand why they have this schedule right here, is because all they need to do is get into the 12-team playoff. They don't. If they won out on this entire schedule, I still don't know if they'd get into the 4-team playoff with this. But
I just think, well, the only thing is like, at some point you got to play somebody to be prepared for somebody. I mean, you just can't cakewalk into that just you're not preparing your players. It's bad. It's bad. Your players are going to suffer. You're going to suffer because once they step up in class, they're not going to be ready for it. So yeah, I disapprove of their scheduling lately. It never used to be this bad. I mean, they never put together what I call a great schedule, but I mean, at least back in the Lou Holtz days and way back when, you'd have a Miami, you'd have Penn State, you'd have some legitimate teams. They would play Purdue, they would play Michigan State, they would play Michigan. They would play Army or Navy, they would play BYU. But those are legitimate D1 teams. They're not Northern Illinois and Miami of Ohio.
No.
I mean, unless Miami of Ohio brings back Ben Roethlisberger, unless he has some, kind of some classes he has to make up, they're not going to compete or shouldn't compete. If they do, then it's kind of the end of Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of here is going back to exactly what you said. How does this schedule prepare them for the playoff? I mean, yeah, I guess if A&M is better than advertised, maybe that helps. But we've already seen Florida State and how bad they looked. And then, USC being ranked 23 preseason is an absolute joke. They shouldn't be anywhere near there. I think they're going to take a huge step back this year. I'm not impressed with anything I've seen coming out of their camp. So really, you take away that number 10 ranking on Florida State, which is obviously false to begin with. You've got a false 23 next to USC. I mean, really, the only ranked team they're playing is Texas A&M, and I don't know how good they are.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. For the still staunch Notre Dame Fighting Irish fans, they'll be jumping up and down. But I'll say what I said last year about Deion: pump the brakes. Pump the brakes hard on this one. All right, let's get into the pros. We had the final cut-down days. Russell Wilson was announced as the Pittsburgh quarterback. You and I talked about this last week. I think it's a total waste of time. Sorry. I just think this team, if this team was in a division where they could win their division and Russell Wilson, with his experience, could help them, navigate the playoffs and maybe get to a Super Bowl, I'm for that. But this team is nowhere near that. And
if he came in and severely outplayed Justin Fields, then I'd be like, okay, Russ isn't washed. Let's go with him. But I mean, we all saw it. We watched the preseason, the little of Russell that we saw. We watched some of the practices, and I can't sit here and tell you that Russell Wilson is better in this Steelers offense than Justin Fields would be. So as I told you last week, I don't get the point in playing him. I really don't understand it.
No, I mean, you lost in the draft war with getting Kenny Pickett. Okay, he turned out to not be the guy. So now you're going old in an attempt to not find your quarterback in the future that you can build around when you're in a division with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. I just think, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm sitting there going, I'm wasting my time here. I'm wasting my time.
Yeah, he is. I mean, look at what they had to deal with, over the last few years. Basically, since Ben Roethlisberger left, it's just been a revolving door of guys, and none of them have been able to get the job done. So why don't you go out and figure out who your quarterback is? Russell Wilson's not going to be your quarterback of the future. I don't have a problem with bringing him in and having him compete with Justin Fields. I wouldn't have just handed Justin Fields the job. I never said that.
Right.
I don't mean that. I think bringing both those guys in, I thought was a great idea, but I just don't understand bringing them both in, having them both compete, and then, it's basically a wash. Well, play the young guy then and get, figure out if he's your guy. Because now you're going to have Russell Wilson play 5 or 6 games, and then you're only going to get, how many games of Justin Fields, and then you're not going to be able to determine whether or not either one of them can be your guy moving forward, or if the young guy can be your guy moving forward.
All right. Let's I got an article here. The top 15, this guy says top 15 free agents still out there. The one thing I wanted to start out with, and then we'll just look at the rest of it. But the biggest one is something I thought about. I was shocked when I opened up this article, and I was just thinking about it, going, I don't like the Giants quarterbacking situation right now. I don't like this guy as an ultimate solution right now. But if I'm Brian Dable and I'm Joe Shane, this is a guy that could be a stopgap bridge guy that's sitting out there. No one's picked him up. Ryan Tannehill. What do you think?
Yeah, the issue with Ryan Tannehill is I think he wants starter money. He's still getting paid handsomely from his contract with the Titans, and he lost some of it, but he still got some of that G-Jack, that guaranteed money. And I think he feels like he's still a starter in this league, and he just doesn't want to come in and be a backup and get backup money. He thinks this is my, I haven't talked to Ryan, but based on what I've heard and based on, the rumblings from his camp is that he's kind of waiting to see if somebody goes down with an injury, and then he wants to come in and get paid and be the starter. But I'm with you. I think if Ryan really wants to play, I think, New York is a possible spot, and he's really more than likely the best, starter type quarterback that's still out there at this point for sure.
How old is he now? 31, 32?
I think he's a little bit older than that. He was an older guy when he first came into the league because he was at Texas A&M for 5 years. I think he's 36 right now.
Okay.
He just turned 36 in July.
All right, because I'm like sitting around going, I guess he can wait. He's got it. Like I said, like you said, he's not hurting for money, and he is on the back end of his career, so he could definitely do a Joe Flacco and say, okay, if one of these teams that do have aspirations loses their quarterback, instead of going to the Giants, where still the offensive line is a question mark, and where the Giants are is a question mark. But just for me as a Giant fan, I was sitting there going, I like him a lot better than Drew Lock and Tommy Cutlets. At least I know here's a guy that's won some games. He's blown some games, but he's won some games.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I like several of the quarterbacks that are available, more than, even more than what they've got there. I like, I'm not a huge fan of him, but Bailey Zappi looked good at times, and I think is a pretty good option as a number 2. I mean, not even a 3. I think he's a pretty good option he's better than a lot of what people have as their backup quarterback right now.
Okay. Just a quick smattering of the other ones they talked about. They went through 15 of these guys. Jamal Agnew going to Atlanta, possibly. Kadarius Toney going to Las Vegas. I could see that happening, but at this point, Toney, Giants got rid of him. Kansas City got rid of him. Doesn't that put up a red flag for most people, saying, why can't this guy with all this supposed talent find a place?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see. I mean, I maybe somebody will give him another chance, but I don't know, man. I mean, you're talking. He played 20 games for Kansas City. He had 41 catches for 340 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then you've got the headache that he provides. And I just don't know if that's worth it. He may find his way back onto a practice squad, but this is a guy who isn't like somebody that's going to help your team on the practice squad. If he shows up, you'll be lucky. And there's highs with him. You'll see things like that touchdown catch and the 65-yard punt return in Super Bowl. But then you'll see all these drops, and then you see all these penalties, like the one that cost them the game late in the season. That could have been a big deal. It ended up not being a big deal because they have Patrick Mahomes, but that could have been a big deal. And why would you want to risk losing a game because of some guy who doesn't seem to care? I think the days of this guy getting signed and getting big time money and getting a chance to be a starter, I think they're over.
Yeah, I think he definitely will go down as one of the poorest Giant draft choices.
Yeah. What does this say about the Giants draft pick? I mean, they took this guy in the first round?
Yeah.
And now he's been released. and is at the moment out of football. I mean, that's not a good look.
Yeah, within the first 5 years of his existence in the league, that's not good to look at all. CJ, who I can't even say his name, the tight end. Yeah, going back to Cincinnati. They're thinking not a bad move. Desmond King coming to the Dallas Cowboys.
I love Desmond King, man. I think he is a guy that has a lot of experience and has a lot of football skill. He's versatile. He can play a couple of different positions. Can help you maybe in the slot. Not the greatest cover guy in the world, but can definitely do some things in a nickel or dime package. And I think any team that's having issues and is maybe short a guy on their defensive backfield, I think this is somebody I would go after.
Yeah. Matt Breida to the Cleveland Browns. They're saying, I think, didn't they Browns pick up somebody?
You mean at running back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously they still have their big dog. Nick Chubb is out for a while. They've got Jerome Ford and they have Pierre Strong, but they just released Deontay Foreman. Right. And that I really didn't understand. Deontay Foreman is one of the most underrated players in all of the NFL. Almost every year, he gets cut, he gets traded, he gets released, and all he does when he gets the football is run people over. I thought he would be the starter in Cleveland while Nick Chubb was still coming back from injury, but Cleveland decided to roll the dice with Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong, and hoping that Nyheim Hines gets healthy. But I think Deontay Foreman's better than all three of those guys.
Yeah. What about Adoree Jackson? They're talking about him possibly heading where's this pick for this guy for Adoree Jackson? I think they're talking to Texans. Yeah, the Texans. Why wouldn't the Giants kick the tires on Adoree Jackson?
Yeah, he knows the system. He's been there. He knows the locker room. He knows a lot about that organization. I think, if he's got anything left in the tank, I would think the best spot for him would be going back to the Giants where he once was.
Michael Thomas to the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, that I could see happening just because, the Broncos, the Broncos just released Tim Patrick, who was kind of a fan favorite out there and was a veteran wide receiver for them. His torn ACL cost him all of 2022, and then he had an Achilles last year. So I wasn't shocked to see him released, but I could see them maybe going in a different direction because I think somebody will probably claim Tim Patrick.
Micah Hyde to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, if Micah can stay healthy, he could definitely provide some leadership in the defensive backfield and also, some playmaking ability. It's just he's getting real long in the tooth, and I'm just not sure he's got the same type of athleticism that he once had. I mean, he's never been the most athletic guy, but he was able to make up for it with his knack for knowing where the ball's going to be, and I just don't know if he can still get it done.
All right, let's go to the cuts. What were the surprising cuts that you looked at and said,
Well, the one I just mentioned, Deontay Foreman, that was probably the biggest one. I thought he would be the starter in Cleveland, and now he's not even on the roster. Maybe they think they can bring him back. I don't know, but that was probably the most surprising to me. Another one was Noah Brown in Houston. Last year was his first year as a Texan. He got released or traded from Dallas and got picked up by the Texans. He caught 33 balls for 567 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he only played in 10 games. So, pretty productive. But it just got really crowded in the wide receiver room after they traded for Stephon Diggs. Now you've got Stephon Diggs, you got Nico Collins, who had a breakout year, and then you got Tank Dell, who really showed himself to be a big play ability guy, and Noah Brown, became the odd man out. So those were probably the two most, surprising cuts that I saw overall that I just didn't really think would happen. And then also too, there was some that just really, not that surprising, but really were kind of, I felt bad for the guys like Lewis Sign, the safety from the Vikings, who was drafted in the first round in 2022, and now he's been released. I mean, let's talk about this GM for the freaking Vikings, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. I'm sorry, dude. This guy, what is he doing? The 2 draft picks, he had 2 picks in the first 2 rounds in 2022. Both of them are not even on the roster anymore. They traded the one kid to Arnold to Dallas, and then they released Lewis Sign, at the cuts here. So the 2 guys that you took in the first 2 rounds are both gone from your first ever draft class, and it was 2 years ago. Then last year he releases Dalvin Cook, and then doesn't score a rushing touchdown all season long. I just have no idea what this guy is doing, and I keep scratching my head every time I see it. The other guy I felt really bad for is Desmond Ridder.
Yeah,
this guy's done, man. I mean, he started not all, but he started 13 games last year for Atlanta, and now he's out of the league. I feel kind of bad for him. He got thrown right into the fire definitely before he was ready. And then you thought, well, maybe he'd latch on with Arizona, maybe be a backup for Kyler Murray, maybe get to play a little bit. And then, boom, he gets beat out by Clayton Tune, and they don't even keep him as their, practice squad guy. Maybe they'll sign him back, but still feel bad for Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked at that one, too. I mean, Clayton Tune isn't exactly – I mean, it's not – with the abundance of what seems to be quarterbacks around the league, I mean, not high-level quarterbacks, but quarterback talent, Clayton Tune, not one that comes up in my mind.
No. And another one that, kind of shocked me a little bit was Carl Lawson.
Right.
The Cowboys signed him late in training camp to maybe take on one of those final pass rusher roles behind DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, and then you don't even keep him for the opening day roster. That to me was like, why the hell did you bring him in then if you were going to just cut him? Maybe he just doesn't have it, and the injuries have started to take their toll. I have no idea. He didn't get a sack in the 6 games he played last year, but he was coming off an Achilles. I didn't really expect him to be picking up 12 sacks last year after that type of injury.
Yeah, Jerry Jones has had the most head-scratching training camp for most people. With your 3 biggest stars, it took so long to get the CeeDee Lamb deal done, and what it ended up being about a 1 year difference. He wanted 3, they wanted 5, they settled on 4. That took weeks to get done. I mean, and you still got Dak sitting out there. From what we've seen of Trey Lance, he still looks like a bust so far. I mean, Cooper Rush, nice backup quarterback, and I think that's why I never understood the Trey Lance move to begin with, because Cooper Rush showed 2 years ago that he could be a viable backup. He did a good job for 5 games. Why was he experimenting with Trey Lance? I just don't get that.
I don't have a problem with bringing him in because you want to have a developmental guy as your 3rd quarterback. You've got your number 2 who's going to be your backup quarterback, and then you bring Trey Lance in to be your number 3, your practice squad guy, your developmental guy. I had no problem with that, but giving up a 4th rounder for this dude that was basically eating up space on the 49ers roster, that to me blew me away. And then I was thinking about you during the press conference when he started talking about he was the best fucking GM in the league. Nobody could do a better fucking job than him.
He's losing it.
And I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, who told you that? You? Maybe you said that to yourself, but no one else has said that.
Like, the funniest thing is that the position of GM in football, and maybe across the landscape of all the major sports, is becoming an extinct position. It's being filled by mathematicians and these guys that are salary cap guys, and they got to be analytical guys, and they got to be this and that, and just that down in the earth guy that looks at a guy and says, I see something. I see a talent there. I see heart. I see something. I can develop something with them. I can, the George Youngs, those kind of guys that would sit there and they go, well, like I remember the year with the Giants when George Young went out and drafted Gary Reasons and Carl Banks, and everybody's like, you already got all pro linebackers. He goes, these guys are special.
Yeah.
These guys will be here, and within 2 years, they're the starting linebackers with Lawrence Taylor and Harry Carson in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, that was a good move. I mean, you want talent is what you want to get filled up with your roster, and I'm just not sure what the ultimate goal is. You've got all these guys now that have expiring contracts that you either drafted or brought in to be the nucleus of your team, and all of them are lame ducks, including your head coach. And he keeps saying that he wants these guys. He wants to put some There's already pressure on these guys. But if you don't have them under contract, then they're nothing. You don't get any value out of it after the season. Let's say they win the Super Bowl. Well, then after the season, all these guys are going to have expiring contracts. They may go somewhere else. There's no guarantee that you're going to bring them back. You think if you make Coach McCarthy, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I'm just saying, let's say they do, and you have him being a lame duck coach all year long. Well, then, bam, you think he's going to come back and sign with the Cowboys after you left him out to dry all year long? I don't see that happening. And what are they doing at the running back position? You know me, I love Ezekiel Elliott more than anybody. They should have brought Ezekiel Elliott back last year to team with Tony Pollard. Now Tony Pollard's gone, and now you've got Ezekiel Elliott and Nate Schmidt in the backfield there. And I have no idea what he's doing.
Yeah, the only thing with Jerry is like I think first of all, I know now he's lost a little bit off his fastball. I mean, the guy's in his 80s. A great businessman. You can take nothing away from him when you think of what he paid for the Giants, for the Cowboys, and what the Cowboys are worth now. Oh my God! But that also has to do with the growing money in sports. So he's not that smart, but. I mean, he blew it years ago. Jimmy Johnson, he probably would have 5 rings. He probably would have as many rings as Robert Kraft right now. And he would have he'll definitely end up they'll put him in Canton because he's Jerry Jones. But it's like whatever.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense. You had the team, you had the coach, you had everything you needed, and because of your own ego. You screwed it all up, and you haven't been able to replicate that since.
All right. So looking at the Jets right now, the Reddick thing is still up in the air, but I mean, I think their defense, with or without Reddick, is going to be okay or good, very good. Aaron Rodgers hadn't had to play in the preseason. I don't think that's a big thing. What do you see as any glaring weakness with the Jets?
Well, that's the biggest one is Hassan Reddick. I mean, they have to get a pass rush going, and without him, I'm concerned about it. I like Jermaine Johnson. I like Michael Clemens. Okay, Tack McKinley's a guy that you can rotate in, but Will McDonald has just shown me nothing.
Right.
He can't even gain 5 pounds. I mean, he can't put on any weight. So he's not going to be able to bull rush anybody, and he's just not quite as quick as we thought he was. So he's basically giving you no production. So you go out and you trade for a big-time double-digit sack guy, and now you won't give him a contract. I don't understand it. Go talk to this guy, ask him what he wants, and frickin' come to some sort of resolution with him so that you get him out on the field. I mean, he hasn't gone through camp. He hasn't played in one preseason game. He's done nothing, and you're counting on this guy to provide you a pass rush, and that's the biggest glaring weakness of all. I mean, the offensive line, I think, is improved. It's deeper. They have a couple of guys that are there that can step in when the injuries are going to happen, because they're going to happen. Tyron Smith's going to get hurt. We know that. Elijah Vera Tucker's been hurt ever since he came to the league. He can't seem to stay healthy. Morgan Moses is a very great football player, but he's long in the tooth as well. So they're going to have injuries there, but they've got some depth that they didn't have in the past. But the biggest weakness and the biggest problem right now that I see is that pass rush spot. They need Hassan Reddick now.
Any other Any other cuts that you thought that stuck out to you or anything? Or
Yeah, we were going through, several of the guys that were kind of surprising to me, and Pakua Nakua's brother looked like a really electric returner for the New Orleans Saints, including a 106-yard missed field goal return for a touchdown. But the Saints didn't feel like he was good enough to play wide receiver, and they cut him. Based on what I've seen from him and his brother, this guy's a baller, and I think someone will pick him up and bring him back. And then also Frank Gore Jr., who showed some flashes for the Buffalo Bills. I think he's going to get picked up and at least be on a practice squad somewhere, before too long, without a doubt. So I think either of those guys are going to find themselves, on a roster without a doubt. And so as I mentioned before, I think Noah Brown will find a spot on the roster. He just was kind of the odd man out there in the Texans because they had so many, wide receivers that were good that they just couldn't keep him around. But, we mentioned before that the Chicago Bears have vastly improved their team, and, not necessarily a cut here, but that trade, a 6th-round pick for Darrell Taylor. This is a guy who had double-digit sacks last year in Seattle, and you just got him for a 6th-rounder. I don't know what the hell's John Schneider was thinking, but it certainly worked out really well for the Bears. And staying in that division, the Detroit Lions, released Nate Sudfeld, making Hendon Hooker the backup quarterback in Detroit. I think he showed some flashes in the preseason. I think he proved that he's the guy for the job. The thing that I didn't understand was the Green Bay Packers, who kept Sean Clifford last year as their backup to Jordan Love, release Sean Clifford and then trade for Malik Willis.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
How is Malik Willis better than Sean Clifford? I mean, I think they both suck, but how is that an upgrade? I really don't think it is.
I was never a Malik Willis believer anyways. I thought, when he came out of Liberty, I remember looking over his stats his senior year at Liberty or his last year in Liberty. And the one big team they played was Mississippi, and Mississippi, I think, intercepted him 4 times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like that's the danger of taking a kid out of a small university like that and never played that, like Notre Dame, never played, had a schedule like Notre Dame, never played anybody. So it's like, what do you really see? And he showed down in Tennessee he wasn't ready for prime time. So I don't know what
I don't know what
they see there.
And then a couple other head scratchers was the 49ers placed Elijah Mitchell on injured reserve and didn't designate him to return. So that means his season is essentially over unless he's released with an injury designation and brought back at a later date. But right now it's like, what are you doing with this guy? He's been your main backup, running back for the last few years. And then you've got the uncertainty of Trent Williams, who has not been he's not on the initial 53-man roster. And then you got Brandon Ayuk, who's supposedly on the roster, but then didn't show up today. They got some big problems out there, and I'm not sure what the plan is because they don't seem to have a plan.
No, they don't seem to have a plan at all. We were doing last week the quarterback rooms, and the time we got left, we got about 10, 15 minutes left. Let's do the NFC here. We've covered a lot of it already anyways. How you feel about their quarterback rooms. We talked about Dak Prescott, and, Dak's going to be there this year. If he's healthy, he'll sling it. How he does in the playoffs, always a question mark. The Giants, we know Daniel Jones, we both said could use an upgrade. Jalen Hurts, I think we both agree that he was hurt last year and they didn't talk about it. Kenny Pickett is still there as his backup, but I don't know if Kenny Pickett's going to make it through the whole year. I think they might look for another option that's stronger because Kenny Pickett is not seemingly reviving himself in Philadelphia. What do you think about Philadelphia's quarterback room?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't have a problem with Kenny Pickett being their backup quarterback. I don't think he was horrible last year. I mean, he never really took that next step to be listed as a starter. But do I think he could come in and maybe win 2 games out of 4? Yeah, I do, especially with the cast that the Eagles have around him. So I don't think it's a huge problem there. Would I like to maybe get rid of Tanner McKee and maybe bring in Desmond Ridder or Bailey Zapp for my third guy? Yeah, I would like to do that, but I don't really have a problem with Kenny Pickett.
All right, Jaden Daniels. He's shown some flashes in the preseason. Heisman Trophy winner. Marcus Mariota as his backup, and the immortal Jeff Driscoll as his third string quarterback. Having Marcus there is pretty good, I think. He's got to know that he's had all the chances he's going to be a starter. What do you think about the Washingtons?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus is, a veteran at this point. It's just so crazy to me to think about that draft where Jameis went 1 and Marcus Mariota went 2, and both those guys now are career backups. It's astonishing to me that it's ended up this way. But, it was just kind of a weird end of the season last year with Atlanta. Remember, Marcus Mariota got benched after a couple of bad performances.
Yep.
And then he didn't show up, and we were just kind of like going, what the hell? But based on what I've heard from the coaching staff and also from Jaden Daniels himself, is that Marcus has been very helpful to Jaden Daniels this offseason and has been a really good pro, meaning teaching him how to be a pro, teaching him how to watch film, teaching him how to practice, all that type of thing. And so I think they're in a pretty good spot right now, but Marcus is a little banged up. So that kind of makes me nervous about having Jeff Driscoll play away when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels who likes to run around. So this is another place where I could see them maybe picking up another guy to have on the practice squad at least.
How do you think it's going to be? I mean, Dan Quinn. I mean, he's a great defensive coordinator. He got the Atlanta to the Super Bowl. Having a young quarterback like Jaden Daniels, I hear a lot of you hear the Colin Cowards and everybody yelling, screaming. You can't have a defensive coach in today's NFL. What do you think about the potential of maybe him not doing enough for Jaden Daniels as a head coach because maybe his eyes are more in the defensive side? You think that's a possibility?
I'm not worried about that at all. This guy, made it to the Super Bowl with the Atlanta Falcons as their head coach. So he's proven that he can, he can coach both sides of the ball as the head guy. He's been around Pete Carroll, who was also a defensive-minded guy and got to 2 Super Bowls and won one of them. So I have no reservations at all about this guy being a head coach once again. And I'm glad he got another shot because I feel like he deserved it. That second half collapse, you could put that on Dan Quinn, I guess. But to me, I put that more on the offense because
why are you throwing the ball?
Why are you not running the football when you're up 28-3? They refuse. Coach Shanahan, bless his soul, is an excellent coach and play caller, but for whatever reason, he refused to run the football, and it cost them a trophy.
And now he's in love with the run game. All right, here's the one thing that sticks out with me is the Bears. Okay, Caleb Williams. Both of us were like lukewarm coming in, but I'll wait and see with him. But his backup is Tyson Bagent. If anything goes wrong, not that I think the Bears are going to leapfrog over Green Bay and the Lions, but they could still be a spoiler. And I don't know. I know there's not a lot of experience in that locker room for your young quarterback to lean on.
Yeah, I would like to have a veteran here that could help Caleb Williams, break film down, read defenses, become a pro. Yeah, I don't understand this. And, last week we talked about the Dolphins and how we liked their quarterback room. And then, 2 days ago, they released Mike White. So right. You got Mike White out there. That's another guy that I could see coming in and maybe being in a quarterback room and being of help because I don't know what Tyson Bagent is providing Caleb Williams as his backup.
Yeah, I think Mike White, though. I didn't I hear Buffalo picked him up? I think Buffalo picked him up, which means he'll have played for every team in the AFC East.
Yeah, I don't know. He's not on their roster yet, but he just may have to pass a physical.
Okay. We've already talked about Jared Goff and Hooker, or Hendon Hooker. We got Jordan Love. We've covered that. And Malik Willis.
Yeah, they signed Mike White to their practice squad.
Okay. So. Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, and Brett Rippon. Well, we talked about Minnesota.
What the hell is that? I mean, this is what you're rolling into the season with. You got Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, and Brett Rippon. You would think that after all the crap that this team went through last year with Kirk Cousins going down and then the revolving door of incapable quarterbacks, and this is what you're starting the season with. Once again, I mentioned this GM. I have no idea what this guy is doing, but Mr. Adolfo Mensa is going to be looking for a job after this year.
I mean,
I guarantee.
It's bad enough you let Cousins walk out the door, but right now the first guy we mentioned about free agents, Ryan Tannehill's sitting around. You mean Ryan Tannehill's not better than Sam Darnold or Nick Mullins?
I would take Ryan Tannehill. I would take Bailey Zapp. I would have taken Mike White. I would take Desmond Ridder. I mean, I would take all those guys over Sam Darnold. I mean, Sam Darnold's been a horrible NFL quarterback, and this is who you're rolling in there with. And then Nick Mullins, you wouldn't take those guys over Nicky Mullins?
Yeah. All right, we got Kirk Cousins down in Atlanta with Michael Penix Jr., their quarterback of the future. That's pretty good shape right there. Cousins will, as long as he's back, he's recovered from that Achilles, okay, you're in pretty good shape there. What do you think?
Yeah, I like this. I like this room, and it just blows my mind that Arthur Smith was the coach down there in Atlanta for 3-4 seasons, and he didn't have any quarterbacks, and then you bring in Raheem Morris and you give him two, a proven Pro Bowl veteran, Kirk Cousins, and one of the best quarterbacks in the draft in Michael Penix. So it's just. The other coach gets 0 and this guy gets 2. Okay. Works out good for this guy, I guess.
Word out of Carolina, Bryce Young's looked a lot better this year. It looks like he's catching on a little bit. He's got the Red Rocketeer behind him, Andy Dalton. What do you think about Bryce Young? Have you seen any of his preseason games?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to really get much out of watching him in the preseason, just because the defenses were so vanilla, and they didn't really do an offensive game plan. So I'm not really sure what to expect from him in year 2. I do know that he's a competitor. I do know that he's got talent. So I expect him. It'd be hard to be worse. But the main thing was he was sacked 62 times. So can they protect him? Is this offensive line any better? That's going to be my biggest question. They went out and spent a ton of money, especially on the interior of this offensive line. But can the guys on the outside keep him upright?
Then we go to New Orleans, where you got Derek Carr, who let's face facts, he's getting long in the tooth fast. You got Dennis Allen, who's basically coaching for his job. The immortal Jake Hayner and the new guy in the block, Spencer Rattler, are his backups. I mean, this Saints team is heading back to where they were before Sean Payton ever got there.
Yeah, I could see this being a long season in New Orleans, simply because I don't like this coaching staff at all, and I thought that they would have brought Spencer Rattler in to come in and compete, and now he's the third quarterback behind Jake Hayner, and then they still got Taysom Hill, who they'll rotate in some as well. So yeah, I mean, Derek Carr kind of is who Derek Carr is, and I don't really like what they have around him. So it does not look good for me down in New Orleans.
And then in Tampa Bay, we got Baker, who showed last year again. When healthy, he can get you to the playoffs. Baker's the kind of guy. I love the guy. I know a lot of people hate him. I don't get it. I know he's cocky. I know he rubs people the wrong way. But I think he's a good, serviceable pro quarterback. Wouldn't want him in New York City because I think him and the media would be at each other's throats too much. If he could keep his mouth shut, I'd take him in a minute. But I think he's found a home in Tampa Bay, and I think he'll be fine. Kyle Trask, unfortunately, he sat behind Brady and didn't do enough for them not to go out and get Baker. What do you think about that, Room?
Yeah, I mean, he had a chance to beat Baker out last year. He didn't do it. And now it kind of looks like he's, maybe a career backup at best. I mean, he's not going to take over and, be the starter anytime soon in Tampa Bay. And I don't see anybody else really giving him a shot without getting to take a look at him. So he's kind of in a rough spot here. But, maybe he'll take advantage of it. Learn a thing or two from a guy who's taken two teams now to the playoffs and go from there. My biggest thing with the Buccaneers is, can they run the football? Because last year that was just the one thing they could not do. And this team could have gone who knows how far if they could have just, been able to run the ball at all.
Yeah. Then we go to the West. We talked about Kyler Murray and Clayton Tune. I wouldn't call that a great situation for that young coach out there. Maybe Kyler's learned some stuff. Maybe he'll put the Xbox down. When he's in the game, like you said, he likes to run too much, and for a little guy. And I don't know much about that with him. What do you think about the Arizona situation?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of him at all, just because he hasn't been able – I mean, the biggest trait you want with your quarterback is availability, and he's had difficulty with that since coming into the league. And, that's been an issue. And the team around him, is getting better. I like their addition of Jonah Williams at right tackle, Paris Johnson Jr., who they drafted last year with their top 10 pick, is going to be a formidable left tackle for years to come. So it's all going to come down on Kyler Murray, man. I mean, they paid him tons of money. He's supposed to win. He's supposed to be healthy. So it's his team. I mean, it's Kyler Murray or bust. So I don't really see why they should be stockpiling backups, because they need to figure out what they've got with him and see if he's their guy for the future, because he's been paid accordingly.
And out in LA, you got Matt Stafford, Stetson Bennett. And Bennett will be his backup. Hopefully Stetson's fully recovered from whatever kept him out last year. Garoppolo is suspended for 6 weeks?
Yeah, I thought it was 6, but apparently it's been trimmed down to 2 or 4. So he'll be available sooner than I expected.
All right, and you got Stafford there. As long as Stafford's upright, he'll keep them competitive. You have one of the best head coaches, offensive minds in the league. Even if Stetson Bennett or Garoppolo have to go in there at some point, I'd say you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I like that run.
The San Francisco, now this bothers me a little bit. I'm hoping nothing happens to Brock Purdy. I think Shanahan has the quarterback he's always wanted in Brock Purdy. Joshua Dobbs, he showed some flashes in Minnesota last year when he was a hero and he showed up, with having never studied the playbook and all that other stuff. But also
played pretty well in Arizona too.
Yeah,
with no help and nobody, thinking that he would be any good.
But I mean, I just don't know how to feel about him, because then the bloom kind of came off the rose late when defenses kind of knew what he could and couldn't do. But I mean, as long as Brock Purdy's there, you're okay, and he's a serviceable backup. Brandon Allen's there just to, wear the red shirt in practice. Finally, Geno Smith and Sam Howell. And I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about how you said that Seattle is kind of impressed with Sam Howell, and Geno's found a place. It looks like they love him there, and I don't think he's going to give up that position easily. But you got Howell behind him. What do you think about that, Room?
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I mean, Sam Howell is impressed John Schneider and also the new young coach and Coach McDonald out there, and they really like him. And this guy got thrown right into the fire last season without really having any preparation whatsoever. And so he's never going to have anything that hard ever again. So,
Right.
He passed that test in my mind and, threw for some yards. Did they win a ton of games? Not really. That's why he's not there anymore. But I like the fact that they made the trade, brought him out there, and then have him like in a developmental role. Will he replace Geno Smith? I don't know, but at least you have somebody that you can turn to, if Geno goes to injury, like we, has occurred in the past in his career. And, as I said, I don't know if he'll be the guy going forward in the future, but at least you have somebody that's a developmental guy that you can work with, try and improve, and see what you can get out of him.
All right. What do we have on man coverage this week?
Yeah, we are going to break down, obviously, the slate of games on Sunday at 11. We're going to break down all the games from Friday, all the games from Saturday, the game from tonight, and then also preview the games for Sunday night and Monday. And then next week on the 8th of September, we are going to have Maurice Hall, the former running back from Ohio State, scored the touchdown against Miami and also a touchdown against Michigan to help get the Buckeyes to the national championship game in 2002. He's now an actor and has a ton of credits against him, being on all kinds of movies and TV shows. And he's a great guy and really fun dude to talk to about sports, as he's been, employed breaking down games along with having an illustrious acting career. All
right. That'll do it for us tonight. We'll be back next Thursday, and we'll give you our picks for the NFL upcoming season. Everybody enjoy your Labor Day and all the football this weekend. Nate, have a good night. Let's go see if Primetime can do it in primetime.
Yeah, I'm going for North Dakota State over here, bud.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Talk to you later.
See you.